Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast.
But for now, we are going to do a double header today because it's basically build up, action.
Yeah.
And we thought we could just combine those.
Right. Because the second chapter of action is going to be a lot of, oh, that's cool, and moving on.
Yeah, basically.
But yeah, we blew through Winter's Heart. I mean, just a lot of double chapters. Although we did have a little bit of a break with the Wisdom Teeth holiday fiasco.
A little bit. But we've done our best to catch us up through this. And I'm so glad we have. I'm so ready to be done with this.
Just wait till we get to Crossroads.
I know.
But think, once we're through Crossroads, then it's Knife of Dreams, which is exciting.
Yeah, Knife of Dreams is giving me hope for existence.
And I'm actually really looking forward to the way we're going to be doing Crossroads.
Yeah, hopefully that will spice it up. Because I do love these books. It's just this pace of going through them is painful.
And we're not taking a break between Crossroads and Winter's Heart, right?
We hadn't talked about doing it, and I don't see why we would. We're going to do tangents. Isn't that enough of a break?
And we already took a break in December for other things.
Yeah,
so. Totally.
So, yeah, I don't think we haven't talked about doing a break, and I don't see a need to do one. Congratulations, everyone. You just heard us decide that live.
Well, also on the schedule, you have us just going right into the next book, so I kind of assumed.
Yeah, I was like, we should probably talk about that at some point, and then here we are. So.
I think maybe we should take a break when we finish Winter's Heart, like halfway through Crossroads.
Once we finish the cleansing.
Yeah, exactly. And then we're done.
We'll see. We'll see how we feel, because I like staying on schedule. Taking a break is actually not a break, you know?
We both hate taking breaks. We love doing this. It's so weird how addictive this podcasting thing is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, don't make me take a break.
We also figure out, are we doing New Spring at some point? Like, are we going to make that the last Robert Jordan thing we do? Or do we want to get Robert Jordan New Spring done before Knife of Dreams so that we actually finish with Knife of Dreams? Or do we do New Spring like at the very, very end?
Well, when I do my read-arounds, I do New Spring between the beginning and the end. Mm-hmm. That's where I put New Spring on rereads. We missed the publishing order window.
Yeah, oh yeah, we definitely missed that. Yeah.
And you keep talking about wanting to do it in one fell swoop, and I don't really want to do that unless there's some hype and some reason to put myself through that sort of ordeal. That
could be a fun way to put a capstone on the podcast, is once we finish up all of the books, do just a ridiculous 24-hour, this is the last official, once we've done this, we've covered the entire Wheel of Time stream fundraising video, see how far we can get ourselves.
Oh my god.
Retirement money, maybe.
Oh my god. Yeah, I don't know. We got to do something cool with it, because it's a one-time thing within the context of this whole deal. So,
well, and I thought we can always have guests on, and then you and I can alternate chapters, so we don't have to
sure,
or maybe I do 2 or 3, and then you do 2 or 3, so we can take breaks and stuff like that.
For sure.
But I think that would be fun. But again, even so, we're talking about years off at this point.
Yeah, not too many, but yes, still years.
Years, yeah.
Yeah.
So, shall we,
Yes, we shall.
Know when to move on, I suppose?
Yes, which is a portion of wisdom, one might say.
We might not have all of our plans worked out, but we have to move forward anyway.
Yeah, so today we're doing kind of the note and the encounter, and this is the note.
All right, so chapter 32, a portion of wisdom, and our symbol is the flag of Farmatting. Yeah, the flag of Farmatting is sort of what I assume. The golden hand, the shields, and the sword. But the shield, I think, is the Guardian. It's the Guardian, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they've got trade, magic, and weapons to protect them.
The Golden Wheel was a large inn, just off the Avharan market, with a long, beam-ceilinged common room crowded with small, square tables. Even at midday, no more than 1 table in 5 had anyone sitting at it. Though, usually an outland merchant facing a woman in sober clothes with her hair worn on top of her head, or gathered up at the nape of her neck. The women were merchants too, or bankers. In Farmatting, banking and trade were forbidden to men. All the foreigners in the common room were male, since the women among them could be taken into the women's room. The smells of fish and mutton cooking in the kitchens filled the air, and occasionally a shout from one of the tables summoned one of the serving men, who waited in a line at the back of the room. Otherwise, the merchants and bankers kept their voices low. The sound of the rain outside was louder. I think I'll stop there. There's not, this welcome to Farmatting. We're at an inn. I think that's with Rand.
It's like, and we're back in Farmatting. Right. It's very like, it's raining. Mm-hmm.
The mention of the women's room, I think that reminds me of just like the men smoking whiskey and cigars back in the men's room after the parties and the women weren't invited to it. Like, again, I think he's trying to do almost a 1-to-1 reversed sexism in Farmatting.
And like not just any sexism, but like the kind of sexism that was in like the Downton Abbey kind of time and place. It's got an extremely wealthy separation of church and state, men and women, power and luxury. Like there's just this like really rigid post-Victorian kind of thing going on. Mm-hmm. And it's like men are forbidden to be in banking. And it's like, what kind of restriction is this? That like, it's one thing to have social norms around who's like the breadwinner or the shots caller in the family. But to be like men are forbidden banking is like, that is a specific kind of sexism.
So Rand's in this inn looking for, well, any one of the 3 guys who, he knows isn't dead, right? He knows he's killed one of them. He doesn't know where Kisman is because Kisman was killed by Fain. Remember, we saw from his POV where he like tried to run and died. And there's actually a reference to his body here.
Yes.
Right. I hear the body did be all black and swollen.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, Rand is looking for 3 people just to be safe, even though only 2 of them are still alive to be found.
Mm-hmm. Gedwin, Torval, and Kisman.
Yeah. And so he's showing around the LTT drawn sketches in an effort to try to find people. And he's also got the others in his party over the last week doing the same, handing these sketches out and trying to look for these guys. And it's been over a week. We get a specific timestamp for that.
And so he's been, basically they're saying, oh yeah, there's a guy here who looks vaguely like that photo. But of course it turns out not to be the guy that he's looking for. We hear a bunch of rumors, this is, again, rumors fade to myth. And sort of a bit of an update on what's going on in the world around him.
Yeah, we've got the Andorrans and the Mirandians with the Eyes to Die, and the Dragon Reborn, and the Amarlin Seed. It's a fun reminder of how legend fades to myth, rubber meets the road for legend fading to myth in this moment.
And of course, the people who are besieging the stone, those are the Terran nobles who fled to Haddon Merc. So they're now like openly rebelling and attacking back. But yeah, he basically is like, I'm not worried about that. It's the stone. Who's going to take over the stone, right? Like, good luck. Yeah, have fun. Is basically his thought.
Yeah, he's like, good luck with that. That'll keep you occupied. And then he's not worried about the Andorrans because Elaine's assessment is basically the same as the rumors he's hearing. So he's like, cool. Everything's fine over there. The thing in Mirandy has to do with Egwene, and he doesn't even spend 2 thoughts on it because whatever, Eyes to Die stuff.
Mm-hmm. So basically everyone's trying to talk Rand into leaving, right? Because they're like, okay, you've killed the one, Kisman probably fled, the other 2 probably aren't even here, right? Like, we've looked for a week, we're not going to find them, let's get out of here.
Yeah, nobody understands why he wants to stay at this point. And he comes to a similar conclusion, that like, I can wait for another day for months. And it's, he's so stubborn, he's the last person to come to that conclusion, but he does come to that conclusion.
Well, and he's procrastinating, right? He's afraid that if he tries to cleanse the source, and when he sees the power through the Choden Call, this disease, this fainting disease that we know has to do with crossing the streams of Balefire with Moradin. He's afraid that that's going to take him out and he's not going to be able to cleanse the source. And so he's trying to basically be like, what if I go to Farmatting where I can't channel? Will that help me overcome this dizzy sickness disease that I'm getting whenever I seize the source? Basically, like, let somehow the channel in me that seizes the source is inflamed. Maybe if I go somewhere and let it cool off for a while, the inflammation will go away and I won't have the same problems when I'm seizing the power.
I like that analogy because his strategy is basically the equivalent of like taking some aspirin when he has a broken leg.
Right. Yeah. Maybe this will fix it. And if I wait a week or so,
just walk it off.
Or just walk it off. Yeah. That's definitely about where he is. Yeah.
And you're going to end up in the ER, dude. Like, you could have just, you're going to make it so much worse. And like, ironically, it doesn't really make it worse, but it does protract everything in the world. Right. Yeah, he's very much hoping it'll just go away on its own if he stops stressing it. And it's like, I get that you don't have a lot of options, but that's wishful thinking, my dude.
This is the one power equivalent of turning it off and turning it back on again.
Which I guess, it really, is there a better strategy? Go to a steading, I guess. But
yeah.
Yeah, it's good reasoning on his part. But as we're learning with his exchange with Lews Therin, like, maybe it's not working.
Yeah, and there's quite a bit of Lews Therin in this chapter, right? Lews Therin and Rand are just having just normal conversations now because Rand is nuts, right? Like, and if anything, Lews Therin is the sane voice in his head now.
Rand is fixated on getting these guys. He is so tunnel visioned in on whatever he's doing. He is really losing the thread of what it means to be the Dragon Reborn. It feels like Lews Therin is a little more grounded in the like saving the world part of the plot.
And so I think what we're seeing is really Rand's fears through LTT, right?
Yes.
You are afraid if the sickness takes you while you're trying to use the access to Angreal, it could kill you or worse. It could kill us all, he moaned. That fear, that is the real reason. Rand's like, oh no, I need to kill these guys. I'm not going to, but he's not like going out and visiting the edge of the town to like drink in the source. He's not doing any of that. Like, he is terrified of seizing the one power, and LTT calls him out on it.
Yeah. And because Rand is really deep in his insanity, he is not hearing any of it. LTT is talking sense, and Rand is like, la, 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 la. Mm-hmm. Rand's like, I have perfectly good excuses. I'm going to live to the last battle, okay? Lews Therin's like, not with that attitude, you aren't.
So the guy who he was looking for comes back, and it looks vaguely like Torval, but it's not. So Rand just like leaves his cup on the table and walks away.
Yeah, he does his recon. It's a false lead, and so he bails and runs into Verin, who is definitely not wandering the streets randomly.
What do you think she's looking for him?
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Everyone wants Rand and Cadsuane to get together. Not like that, you perverts.
I was like, damn. I knew she was using Alana as a proxy, but...
No, but everyone is trying to get Rand and Cadsuane to talk to each other and be on the same page. Verin no less assiduously than anyone else, in my opinion. This meeting is too providential to be anything but a complete Verin plan.
How providential?
Extremely. That's how providential.
But yeah, he asks if Cadsuane sent Verin, and Verin's like, absolutely not. No, she would never do that. And I think that's true, but at the same time, they're working together. So it's like, no, she didn't send me, but she wants me to be here.
I think Verin sent herself, much like she did in Great Hunt.
Right.
But also agreed, Cadsuane would never send for Rand, certainly not with Verin.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and I feel like there's two trivia questions here. There's two inns that he walks by, the Heart of the Plain and the Three Ladies of Morado.
Very good trivia questions right there. Take notes, everyone.
Yeah.
I will be passing this on to game makers for future events.
Yeah, we haven't had Verin be very providential lately. It's been nice to get a little Verin back in the books. I feel like she's been in the tents, right? She's been helping out Rand, but she's been sort of doing it in the background.
She was being providential. Providential?
I'm grimacing. I'm grimacing. That was bad. That was really bad.
Excellent.
Even for me.
Excellent.
So Verin talks a little bit about Olivia and the fact that she's like obviously such a powerful channeler. She's able to learn anything quickly. We've seen that from all our other powerful channelers, right? The more powerful you are, the quicker you learn. Mm-hmm. She also mentions the Sean Channer and Ilian, which, you know, really throws Rand for a loop because remember, the whole point of the last book was him basically doing jungle warfare with the Sean Chan to drive them back, and his whole pulling out the Kalendor and killing a bunch of his own troops and everything that went on there. I mean, he that was, I will beat the Sean Chan, and it turns out it did nothing, maybe a slight delay at the very best.
Trench warfare is a bitch.
Jungle warfare, I almost want to say. I think this is...
It was more jungle warfare, but it's the futility of trench warfare, right? Just back and forth over the same bit. It's like he went through all that effort and they got it back now. You know? It's all gone. All that progress. And it hurts. It hurts.
And this is the first of some of my favorite quotes. Just really good quotes in this chapter. That's why I don't read about the battles. They seldom seem to alter anything in the long run, only in the short.
First time reader me was like, Verin is the best because I too do not. I mean, you guys all know how much I enjoyed the political plot lines of this. Same thing with battles. Like I skip the battle. I don't skip the battles. I can't pay attention for very long to the battles, and I just let them wash over me.
But also, how many times does Jordan show you a character coming back from a battle, going into a battle, right? Like, there's so many times. I know we talk about like Dumai's Wells, and there's these fights at the end of every book. At least in the beginning of the series, but it's really, we didn't see Couladin die. We didn't see Matt fight Couladin. Like there's so many classic battles in this book series that we really only hear about afterwards or see the aftermath of or see the preparation for. And I think that's Jordan doing a little head nod and basically saying, yeah, you don't always have to write about the battles. They really don't always make a difference. Like history is going to go based on conquest and individual politics more so than big battles. And they don't always turn on it. Yeah,
I totally agree that this is very much Robert Jordan speaking to us directly through Verin. Like, it's okay if you don't read the battles. It's fine. Those generally don't make much of a difference. I'll let you know when the battles made a difference. And then Lews Therin counters back with, you know, the very obvious counter to that, which is, except for the times when a single battle does make a huge difference, because sometimes it does.
Right. Well, making a difference in the short run can affect things in the long run, too.
Yeah, and I mean, as he says, like, you can't necessarily tell if a battle was significant or not until long after the fact, right? You can declare a battle important as it happens, but time will tell in the long run.
So Rand decides that he wants to apologize to Cadsuane, and it's a bit of a weird passage, his decision to go ahead and just, like, send her an apology, and he wants to listen to her, and he wants her advice. Like, I feel like he's tried everything else, and he's finally like, fine, I'll apologize, right? It's like, after every single other thing in the world has been tried, he's trying an apology.
And to ask for help. Right? Is like the last thing you would expect Rand al'Thor to do is to ask an Aes Sedai for help. But everything else isn't working. And I mean, Min has been hammering on this point at him for months. That he needs something from Cadsuane. That he needs to learn something for her. She has been hammering at him. So he's going to make it seem like he suddenly pivoted to it and decided it. But really, it's Min wearing him down. I think. I mean, and also like, it not just wearing him down, like, in a combative way, but, like, the message has finally sunk through all of his stubbornness, and it's percolating through his subconscious.
So Verin tells him, you know, I'll convey your apology, show up at the Barsala Palace on the Heights this evening, and that's where we'll meet you.
And that's when she decides to leave. This is why I'm so sure that she, aside from the part where she veers to meet him in the first place, the part where as soon as she gets a date set, she's like, and now I need to leave. Now I notice I'm wet. Now I notice the rain. It's like, yeah, this entire meeting was so contrived.
Totally.
And then she drops the facade for a minute, which is fun. I love seeing Verin speak directly without the muddledness. And she's like, by the way, Cadsuane's like top shelf. FYI, don't pour that down the drain.
And then the next part that I really love is sometimes that woman frightens me, Lewis. And Rand nodded. Cadsuane did not frighten him, but she made him wary. LTT's not talking about Cadsuane.
No, he is not. He is talking about Verin because Verin is so dangerous.
Right. And Rand just passes right over that. He's like, yeah, Cadsuane's pretty dangerous. And LTT's like, not what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Verin is terrifying.
Yeah, especially to someone who, like, LTT has seen more of the bad shit about the world and is more worldly and is more conversant in how complicated and evil people can be than Rand is. Rand is still fundamentally a 20-year-old, whereas LTT was like, what, 400? Something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
So, like, he looks at Verin and goes, oh, that's a good player of whatever game we're playing. Rand looks at her and sees what she wants him to see because she's older than he is, but LTT's older than Verin. Right? LTT knows what he's looking at.
Right.
Not the specifics, but the quality.
So Rand heads back to the inn where he's staying called the Council's Head.
2 miles walking in the rain. I hope he has wool socks.
Or a good rain jacket, I suppose.
Yeah, because that's cold and miserable. 2 miles in just a blowing rainstorm is... ugh.
But this is where Rand kind of ignores his physical needs, right? Like there's the explicitness of it, right? Where he definitely, uses the one power trick of ignoring the cold and the miserable. But there's also like Rand disregarding his body's needs and the pain that he's going through because he's always in pain. Right.
This is such a mild discomfort compared to what he normally endures. Like whatever. Yeah. So yeah, he strolls on back to his inn.
And there's a lot of sort of relationship stuff here between Min and Rand and Lan and Rand and Nyneave and Lan. And this is almost just fun relationship building. I don't have a lot of notes for the next couple of pages.
Yeah, there's not much. Rand and Lan show up at Verin levels of convenient timing. They both have come up empty-handed in their day of searching. We get the title for the chapter.
Right, which is a great quote from Lan.
Yeah. It's, you can never know everything, and part of what you know is always wrong, perhaps even the most important part. A portion of wisdom lies in knowing that. A portion of courage lies in going on anyway. And that is some advice to live by, my friends.
Yes. Yeah. It's especially for someone who likes to be a perfectionist.
Yes.
Going on anyway. You don't know everything. What you do know might be wrong. You still have to put out a product. You still have to, finish your project. You still have to do things in your life. Yeah, you do have to submit, And it's so easy for someone who's a procrastinator and a perfectionist to just be like, well, I know it's not perfect, and I know there's things I don't know. I should do some more research before I get started. I should keep working on my script before I record anything. That sort of thing. I'm not referring to anybody here.
I'm not flipping the camera off.
I have no idea. I couldn't be talking about anybody in this who does this podcast.
I'm just going to blink at you until we move on.
Did you ever get that lavalier mic?
Yeah, it arrived last week, and I've begun playing with it, and it works really good. It's amazing how much I can hit the mic, and it doesn't come through in the signal. So I'm going to take a stab at recording this week.
Oh, good. Yeah,
so... fuck you, bro.
I'll believe it when I see it.
But no, it's you're very, very correct. And everyone, myself included, can all take comfort in knowing that Lan thinks you are courageous if you push forward anyway. Lan thinks you're courageous if you push forward anyway with that imperfect project. Okay? If Lan thinks you're courageous, what more validation do you need?
None.
What would Lan do?
Yeah.
What would Lan consider courageous in this situation? So they then talk a bit about how Min and Nyneave are putting a bunch of effort into getting Cadsuane over, kind of, what's the word? They're like kind of gaming out how their wives are gaming out how they're dealing with things, you know? It's just, like you said, it's relationship building stuff.
Right.
And there's a fun quote from Rand where he says that Cadsuane treats everyone like they were novices, which, like, yes.
Yeah.
That is exactly what Cadsuane is doing.
When you get to a certain age, everyone feels like novices. Yeah,
exactly. And then he does learn from Lan what's up with Nyneave and Min and why they're out with Cadsuane, and the fact that they're with Cadsuane, right? He knows that Min and Nyneave and Olivia went to the edge of the city. He doesn't know they went with Cadsuane. He learns this from Lan, and so then he's able to surprise Min. Well, no, he learns it from Verin, confirms it with Lan, and then when they come back, he gets to surprise them with like, hey, I know, by the way. And
he says Verin told me. He deflects because like Nyneave, of course, is like Lan, and he's like, no, Verin told me. Lan just confirmed what I already knew.
Yeah, exactly. And gave a little bit more emotional context, Nyneave.
They all give him advice about Cadsuane, and he's like, and he can tell Nyneave has differences with Cadsuane. She could work out. Min saw a strict aunt in the woman, and Olivia saw a strict teacher. And so just like based on the advice they give, there's this whole like, everyone sees her as strict, just a different kind of strict.
Right. And it's funny because he's like, hey, so I decided to apologize and work with Cadsuane. And everyone's like, well, we did a bunch of work too. So, yeah. He does not get the response he was expecting from this magnanimous gesture of the Dragon Reborn deigning to apologize to Cadsuane. And none of the women are impressed by his magnanimity.
I love it. Sort of tells you a little bit of how Min views her aunts.
A lot about how Min views her aunts.
Like, okay.
They were a lot to be raised by.
Nyneave says Cadsuane showed her what two of the Terangrial do. That's the well, which lets her pull the power even, which it would work in a steading too, I think we decided.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I believe we decided that. That would make sense to me.
But otherwise, it's a pretty specific Terangrial for farmatting. It feels like a very specific thing to be made. And it's like, I guess if you're cut off, there's a question. If you were tied off from the one power, could you still draw in power through the well?
I would think not, because the knot of the shield would be like on the part of your soul that does the channeling, right?
Yeah, that makes sense to me. But it feels like almost like what if embracing the power through the Angrial, or the well in this case, would maybe that's inside the blockage, and so you can pull in power through that?
Nah, I don't think so. And Chad agrees with me, so.
Yeah.
But that's an interesting loophole. I would love to see someone try it.
And then the other one is the, basically magic armor.
Oh, is that what that is?
Well, she doesn't say what the other one is, but later she goes, oh, I would basically be invulnerable from being stabbed. And Rand goes, oh, Cadsuane must have identified that one as well.
Oh, maybe. Yeah, she doesn't mention it here, and it's kind of weird.
It's definitely in the next chapter, because she mentions she showed me what two of them do. One of them's the well. She doesn't say what the other one is until the next chapter.
No, the other one's the detection ring.
Oh.
Yeah, the ring with the pale green stone that will detect someone channeling Sidar as much as 3 miles away, or Sidene, and maybe even the direction as well.
Right. Okay. Then she must also identify the shield.
Yeah, and or Nyneave had figured that out already.
Fair enough.
These were just the only two that she hadn't sorted out.
Right.
I don't know. There's a lot that gets left off screen that I would have loved to see. I would have loved scenes upon scenes of them just playing with the Terangrial and figuring out what they do and testing, well, hit me with a pillow. Okay, hit me with a stick. Okay, hit me with a sword. That would have been really fun. And then there's this fun part where some of them Cadsuane didn't identify, and Olivia scolds Nyneave for being happy with ignorance. She's like, how can you stand not knowing things? And Nyneave's like, well, it's just, I'm happy she didn't know. And it's just, I love Olivia's egoless devotion to information and not even getting Nyneave's baggage. It's so funny.
Well, and it's not that she couldn't identify them all. She didn't know how the ring told direction. Mm-hmm. So she knew the ring detected Sidene or Sidar, but she didn't know how to make it to tell what direction that was in.
Well, they still don't know how to tell the direction.
Right.
Now she knows that it can detect the other kind. That's what Cadsuane brought to the table.
Right. And Nyneave is satisfied that Cadsuane didn't know how to figure out what direction it was detecting in.
Right.
Which I'm curious, how would the ring detect a direction? Like a color in the stone? Or, I mean, I guess it depends on how it indicates, right? What if it vibrates when there's channeling? What if it only vibrated on, like, you held your hand up and since the ring is like 360? Yeah. It gave you a direction, something like that.
That's what I would imagine, is it just vibrates at a certain point around the band and you can go hotter, colder from there. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Lots of hand waving on the visual presentation of that.
And I'm pretty sure this is before Aviendha does her, like, identifying Terangrial thing. Or no, or is that's after? Because they've already sorted through all that stuff.
I don't recall us having that scene in the podcast yet. Like, we've had Aviendha helping sort out some of the junk, but we haven't had the really good scene in Andor with all of them. But that's after Nyneave takes off anyway. So Nyneave could have benefited from when Aviendha was first picking through the junk on the way out with the Bowl of the Winds.
I think it's Path of Daggers. Chapter 15?
There's definitely one during the pregnancy arc when Elaine's complaining she can't do the studying because she's pregnant, and Aviendha identifies a whole bunch more. That's a very cool scene, and that one hasn't happened yet. But others have happened. You're right.
Okay. So, as Nyneave is pointing the well out to Rand, she called it a well. He gave a start as something brushed his face, and she giggled. Nyneave actually giggled. It is a well, she laughed, behind fingers pressed over her mouth. Or a barrel, anyway, and full of Sidar. Does she channel a little bit there? Something brushed his face.
She definitely did.
But there's no detection, right?
It's such a featherlight touch. It's just within the error of what the thing can detect. That was a dumb move on her part.
Nyneave. Absolutely, that was dumb.
Nyneave.
Like, what are you doing, Nyneave? Seriously?
Yeah, it's gotta just be that she happened to go under the sensitivity of the detector. That was a silly, silly move on her part.
Excuse me, I've always just skipped over that. I never realized that she channeled a little bit there, because it's just a very short statement of he gave a start as something brushed his face. But it's got to be the air.
I never thought about the implications of that. I always knew that it was the power, but I never thought about, like, where are the guards crashing down on them for her channeling? Like,
also, no reference to shivers on his arm. Jordan has pretty much given that up. The whole, like, I mean, Rand uses it to detect when somebody's channeling, but for a while, every time a female channeled around Rand, he, like, mentioned feeling cold or getting goosebumps. And now there's nothing like that.
I wonder if in this case I wonder if this is something that's affected by the fact that she's using a Terangrial. She's not channeling, like, from the current source. She's channeling from, like, a battery of the source. If maybe it, like, doesn't... More likely it's just that Jordan decided that he'd hit that detail enough times.
Right.
That's
we just
simpler.
kind of assume. Yeah. And I think he just forgot about it, to be perfectly honest.
Jordan forget about one of the mechanics of his world building? Never. Never.
Especially in these later books sometimes. I've noticed there's a couple of things in these books where I'm just like, it feels like an error, or just forgetting some of the rules that you've already laid out. Especially around traveling.
Like last chapter with the dice.
Right.
Or the traveling thing. That's an even better example. Yeah, somebody needed a wiki. More than just asking Maria if something was right or not.
Right.
Yeah, so next thing I've got is the letter.
Yeah, so the letter, basically, as they're sitting around having character development, a letter gets delivered.
Yeah, I guess it's a letter for Rand, but it gets delivered to his wife because men cannot be trusted with personal privacy. And then Min just, like, rolls with it. It is like, yes, let me absolutely behave like I have a right to read your mail.
She loves being his wife in farmatting.
Yeah, she's taking a little bit too much to farmatting culture for my taste. Min, stop being problematic. Come back.
I think because she knows it's temporary, so she's just having a little fun with it. She's like, I know this isn't how our relationship works, but it's fun to mess with you a little bit. So yeah, she opens his mail, which fine, right? Not that big of a deal.
And then she goes to burn it before letting him read it, which is not cool, girl.
At the same time, she's like, that's the only way she could have prevented him from going to do what he does.
Which, in fairness, is a good call on her part. This entire next chapter's worth of mistake was unnecessary on a lot of levels.
It really was.
So, like, her impulse is correct, technically.
And, of course, the letter is from Pad Fain, right? Fain is setting up a trap. He wants Rand to walk into it. The letter says, I know who you are, and I wish you well, but I also wish you gone from Far Madding. The dragon reborn leaves death and destruction where he steps. I now know why you are here, too. You killed Rochade, and Kisman also is dead. Torval and Gedwin have taken the top floor above a bootmaker named Zarim on Blue Carp Street, just above the Ilian Gate. Kill them and go, and leave Far Madding in peace. Which
sounds like it was written by a council member who wants him the fuck out. That's how it's written, but it's obviously Fain.
Right, and the spidery hand is pretty much obvious. Like, that's a big clue.
And there's a blob of red wax. It's like not a nice seal. You know, it's just a nasty blob of wax. Everything about it is Fain, but he's ostensibly pretending to be imitating a council member on the down low.
Right, but it's a trap.
Yeah. And Rand
knows it's a trap.
As Rand does what every Two Rivers person does when faced with a trap.
Run into it face first, screaming as loud as you can.
It doesn't count as a trap if I know it's a trap. It's like, oh my God, dude, have you not read the preceding books? Well, no, of course not. You were having your own story. But like, if he had, he'd know that Egwene and Nyneave and Elaine have tested this theory and it never works.
Hey, look, a pit full of spikes. If I know it's a pit full of spikes, I can jump in it and it won't stab me. See? Yeah! Wait. No, that doesn't stop the spikes from being there.
Only in comics does not looking down negate gravity.
So what you're saying is Rand is Wile E. Coyote here?
He's trying very hard to be Wile E. Coyote, and it is not working, as the end of the next chapter will show.
Uh-oh. I can just see, actually, I kind of see LTT being Wile E. Coyote holding up the signs, like in the back of Rand's head. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So with that...
That's the end of chapter 32.
Moving on.
To chapter 33, Blue Carp Street, the place where he's been invited. And our symbol is one we have not seen for a while. It's the ruby-hilted dagger.
This is the encounter. There was the note of the encounter, and we just did the note. Now, here's the encounter.
And yeah, I mean, it's definitely Fain.
Yeah, the entire thing is a setup by Fain. And we shift perspectives into Min's head for this, but it's still just, and we're only in her head for a little while, and then we go back to Rand. We're very much just in Rand space, following the same plot. We just brief scenic detour into Min's perspective for some reason. Min sat cross-legged on the bed, not as comfortable a position in a riding dress as it was in breeches, and rolled one of her knives across the backs of her fingers. It was an absolutely useless skill, Tom had told her, but sometimes it caught people's eyes and made them pay attention without need to do more. In the middle of their room, Rand was holding his scabbarded sword up to study the cuts he had made in the peace bond, and paid her no attention at all. The dragon's heads on the backs of his hands glittered, metallic red and gold. "You admit this has to be a trap," she growled at him. "Lan admits it. A half-blind goat in Salizen has more brains than to walk into a trap. Only fools kiss hornets or bite fire," she quoted. "A trap isn't really a trap if you know it's there," he said absently, bending the end of one of the severed wires a little to line up better with its mate. "If you know it's there, maybe you can see to walk into it so it isn't a trap at all." Classic Two Rivers.
Trying to get back to the chapter.
Rand, Two Rivers stubbornness, walking into a trap. Rand does not intend to be killed. Brilliant. Like anyone ever intends to be killed.
I love that line. So another one of the great lines. We're talking about how there's a bunch of great lines in these chapters, and that's definitely one of them. As if no one ever intends to get killed. Well, except for suicidal folks, but that's a whole other...
But yeah, it's generally when you go on an assassination mission, your goal is to survive. That is generally accepted practice.
I also think it's funny because he will intend to get killed during the last battle. He's sort of going into that intending to die, right? Because you have to die to live.
Yeah, for sure. But Min is very fixed on Rand needs to live, and so she will deliver the straightforward logic and not take all those caveats into account.
And then she pulls out like a cat o' nine tails, right? Or it's three
cat
tails.
Of three tails,
she pulls
yeah.
Cat of three tails. But it's like a whip, right?
It's
she
a
pulls
literal
out a leather whip. It's a literal whip, and she's like, I might use this on you. And while she's doing that, everybody walks in.
Yeah.
And she's like, let me just throw this away.
She just drops it and kicks it under the bed. It's the most obvious thing in the world.
Listen, always hide your sex toys when you have guests coming over, okay? It's the polite thing to do.
The weirdest thing about this, aside from the part where, like, they're kept in every room, it's just like a standard issue thing, like a Gideon's Bible or something. There's just the whip in the bedside table. Like, Min is, like, not even threatening it sexily. No. And it just, the amount of awkward.
Right.
But, like, why does every room have to have this, like, a Gideon's Bible? Like, ugh. You say put your sex toys away when the guests come over. This woman says get out sex toys for every guest. That's how this woman runs her operation.
Well, and it is, in this culture, not a sex toy. It's literally a disciplining tool.
You know, like, half of them think of it as a sex toy.
Well, yeah, okay, fair enough.
But yes, ostensibly, it's a personal massager, not a vibrator. Personal massage oil, not lube. I get it. Personal discipline tool.
For tobacco use only, okay?
Yes. We'll know it when we see it.
Again, I have another section that I'm pretty light on notes in for this next little bit.
Yeah. It's character stuff, right? Min is jealous of Nyneave because she's married to her warder, and her warder isn't going to die really soon, except maybe he will. Some
thoughts about Olivia and the fact that she was demonic at 14, and so she acts a little bit like a child and
doesn't know anything about what men and women do at all.
So she's this like weird, like she's 400 but 14 at the same time personality.
And sounds like even more ignorant than a lot of 14-year-olds.
Right. Well, yeah.
A lot of 14-year-olds I knew, so I would say. Yeah, there's the whole, like, Rand has the he's so frozen and stoic, but also the veins of gold are burning through. Mm-hmm. And so you get that reminder that he does still have a heart somewhere inside all of that stoicness. A clock in every room would be so expensive it would be an inn for queens and kings. It's just funny to think about how expensive something as simple as a clock was. It wasn't always simple, right? We're like, my phone does everything except all the time, right? Like, but clocks are so expensive.
But yeah, if you think about it, in this world where they have blacksmiths making all the small pieces for a clock and putting them together, I mean, mechanical clocks are still really expensive, frankly. Just because we have cheap digital ones doesn't mean the mechanical clocks aren't like, I can't afford to buy a watch that's a mechanical watch. Like, they're expensive.
That's true. And actually, Brandon and I both have grandfathers who learned watch repair as like a fallback skill when they were young men. Because even in the early turn of the last century, like, no, watches are like really fiddly things. It's quite skilled labor to be able to take a watch apart and put it back together. And like, it always would have been a good fallback skill for those men, even though they didn't need it. Like, it's a legacy in both of our families. So yeah, they all leave and say, so Nyneave, Rand, and Lan leave, leaving Min and Olivia behind. And Olivia is supposed to watch Min, and Min immediately convinces Olivia that actually going to Cadsuane is the correct thing to do. That's that. And end of POV.
Which makes it, I mean, because Rand basically gets captured, right? So having Cadsuane there to pull his bacon out of the fire is really important.
Yeah, Min doesn't know that this is going to go badly, but also she knows it's going to go badly.
Yeah. Yeah. She knows.
Yeah.
She knows.
Yeah.
She knows it's a trap, and so she knows that something's going to go badly, and either Rand's going to get stuck with Farbatting, or, he'll have another unhealable wound that'll need to be healed, right? Like,
absolutely. And he runs into Fain. I mean, that's very much on the table.
Yeah, totally. So the next thing I have is switching to Rand's POV. Back to Rand's POV. Yep.
We are with him watching the house of the bootmaker and eating street cart food. Because it's funny how much RJ puts like rain and street cart food into just like this high fidelity visceral detail in this chapter.
Are you sure he hasn't been hanging out in Portland?
It really seems like he's been to Portland.
Rain and street food is pretty much our modus operandi.
Yeah, exactly. You turn up your collar and you buy some hot, sizzling meat off of a grill that some toothless old man has, and it's the best tasting thing ever. Like, yes. It just feels like a very like postcard memory that Jordan is just like, what if I just like transposed that in and then just put Rand in there instead of me? It'll be fine.
But I like this Rand who sort of hangs out on the street and is a little more relaxed. He doesn't have his guard of maidens around him, which is a whole other problem that we can get into. The fact that he's left the maidens behind again after they beat his ass for leaving them behind, right? Like, but he left them behind when the attack on the Kyrian Palace, basically blew it half up, and he fled.
Yeah, this is Rand, instead of being like an emperor or a king or even a paladin, this is Rand as a rogue. Mm-hmm. And it's pretty cool. I think Rand could have had a good career as a rogue.
This is much closer to Fisher King Rand than some of the other Rands. This is the Rand who's got the wound in his side, who's wandering around begging,
He's still paying at this point.
He's still paying, but like there's this idea that, he's a little more of a raggedy king. He's the king of the land who's wandering around. His powers have been stripped from him in this particular city,
Yeah. And he's incognito. You can't tell he's a king.
Right. Exactly. So the sort of the slumming it aspect of Rand is the Fisher King.
Yeah. Luce Theron has a moment of nostalgia because street cart food is just that visceral.
Oh, yeah, everybody. I mean, if you've had street cart near food, this is just the best.
It's timeless aspect of human existence. I love that Rand is like, I like to know what kind of man makes my boots. Like, what? You're doing a character interview on your bootmaker? That's the weirdest alibi ever, but okay. So then we get basically the floor plan. Rand is doing recon. Basically, like, here's the layout of the building, here's the relationship of the locks and the owners and the patrons, and it's a lot of description.
Mm-hmm. And sort of, he's also scoping out the building, right? He's like checking out that there's roof access and seeing what sort of business is going in and out of this bootmaker's space, just sort of scoping it out.
Yeah. Has anyone ever had a twisted paper cone heaped with roasted peas? Because it sounds really good. I feel like it'd be kind of like an edamame sort of thing. Mm-hmm. I want it.
I feel like I've had the roasted pea, like at Trader Joe's, I've had a little like thing of roasted, like jalapeno dried, freeze-dried peas or something like that.
Oh, the wasabi peas?
Exactly the wasabi peas, yeah. So that's sort of what I imagine he's eating without like, but if you sprinkle some like hot powder on top of it or something like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That sounds good.
Or just like roasted peanuts at a baseball game.
Yeah, true.
Maybe peas or peanuts. No.
Maybe.
Okay.
It could be.
So I'm just imagine hot peanuts at a baseball game, basically.
Yeah.
Hot salted nuts.
Moving on. So he stands there, and then the targets show up, so he gets a positive ID, so they are go for the mission. They all have proof, though. Rand and Lana and Nyneave all fan out and get different pieces of proof to triangulate their target. And then we get this whole thing with Nyneave.
What? Lifting him up?
being like, oh, you're going to stab them. I didn't think about how assassinating someone involves stabbing them. And I'm like, Nyneave, what books have you been living through? I don't like this section from Nyneave, and I don't know why.
I think it's just she didn't think it through. And then once she does, she goes, oh, yeah, kill them in their sleep if you can. Right? It's this idea of like, her first instinct is the two rivers upraising of, no, don't hurt anybody. Stabbing in the back isn't honorable. And then she thinks about it and goes, wait a minute. These fuckers, stab them in their sleep if you can. Right? She has that moment where she just has to stop and think about it. What's the saying? Your first instinct is how you were raised. Your second instinct is what you actually think.
Yeah, I don't know. I expected her to be more hard by now, given everything.
Giving everything she's gone through, the attacks with the Forsaken. But, one thing about Nyneave is she's still about saving lives. She's still about healing. Like, how often has she actually unleashed her powers and killed anybody, right? Like, some fades, I can imagine her taking them out, but she's been pretty non-combative with her power, right? Even Moghedien she took captive, right? I cannot remember Nyneave killing anybody with the power.
So then what do you think she was planning on doing with going in? Why did she think she was going to need to go in? Like, because they were going to get hurt and she was going to need to heal them right away?
Yeah, it's protection. She's all about protecting Rand and she's there to protect Rand and Lan.
I just feel like you should think through what you're signing up to more thoroughly when you go out into the street on an assassination mission.
Well, yes, but should Nyneave think more thoroughly through her goals and not just act on pure instinct? Yeah. Does she? Absolutely not.
Fair point.
Yeah.
Fair point. It just always feels a little bit like a backsliding of maturity for me in this moment, but maybe it's just she's got a narrow tunnel vision also on what she's doing and just isn't. I don't know. She's got a lot on her mind. She could be forgiven for missing something obvious to me, the reader.
I didn't think before. I was thinking of it as an adventure, confronting dark friends, renegade Ashaman. But you're going up there to execute them. You'll kill them before you know they're there. Yeah. I'm
with Rand and Lan on this one. Like,
yeah.
So, yes. Duh.
So, yes. Right.
What else are we here for?
Right. I
don't know. I'm with the men on this one. Like, anyway.
But I think it might have to do with how she was recruited, right? Because Rand went up to her and was basically like, hey, you want to go on an adventure and cleanse the source? And she's like, yeah, that sounds fun. And he's like, I just got to take care of a few things first,
So she lifts them up and then goes away.
Mm-hmm. And that's enough power to set off the finders, right?
Yes, this starts the clock on the guard showing up.
What eventually gets Rand caught.
Right, because they're running away and would have gotten away, but then they slip and fall, and thus the guards are right there to collect them, like, immediately.
Mm-hmm. It is weird, though, that the first little bit of channeling doesn't attract anything, but I guess it's just not enough.
Just not sensitive enough. There has to be a sensitivity threshold.
A threshold, yeah.
But it was a silly risk. So yeah, they jump on through the trapdoors and find a trap. Shockingly.
Dead bodies, right.
Dead bodies, yes.
The two Ashaman were stabbed, very clearly by Fain's
They're
blade.
all bloated and nasty.
And he must have been waiting for them because Rand saw them go into that building 10 minutes earlier, so they just died. Unless them going into the building was Fain's illusion, but I don't think it was.
Agreed. Like, it's possible, but it makes way more sense that Fain sends the note, hides out in the room, kills them knowing that Rand will be in shortly because they just, would have, because Rand's obviously going to be staking the place out because he got the note. Like,
right.
Yeah.
Right. And my favorite bit about this next scene is how much Fain's presence activates the wound on Rand's side.
Pretty much completely cripples him for the duration of the fight. He pushes through, but he is working at like 30% capacity just because of the presence of Fain in the dagger.
It's why I think Matt had to be the one to kill Fain, right? I don't think Rand could have ever been the one to kill Fain because Fain's presence causes him pain.
Yeah, it would have had to have been a like Moraine and Lanfear through the doorway kind of attack. It couldn't have been a like proper stabby stab like Matt did.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So now 4 out of the 5 are dead, right? So Rand's thinking, I don't care who kills the Shiva, I'm just glad they're dead. I don't care. Which I thought it was funny. If a stranger finished Yeshiva, it would not matter. And doesn't it end up being Elsa,
Elsa
right?
Who finishes Yeshiva.
Right, yeah. And that's during the battle at the end.
Yes.
So Yeshiva doesn't last through the end of the book. But yeah, I thought that was a little ironic.
Indeed.
Not exactly a stranger, but somebody will finish him off.
Not somebody that Rand set on the trail by any means.
No.
And not someone who was intending to kill him specifically either. It's just kind of like, it's an enemy, I will kill him. Not like, we're going after the renegade sort of thing.
But of course, Elsa doesn't even think of it as an enemy. She's just like, oh, that's a dark friend who's threatening Rand's life, and I need Rand. And I'm also a dark friend. I'm just a dark friend who wants him to survive.
Yep.
Infighting, man, among dark friends. It's just the worst.
When the enemy is that messy, you have half your work is already cut out, is already taken care of for you. It's great.
Jedi Pants makes a point, is the pain from the Fain or from the dagger?
Ooh, that is a good question.
And I think it's just from the corruption of Mashadar, right? It's just that corruption is more complete when Fain has the dagger.
Do you think that Fain or the dagger in isolation would have the same or lesser effect?
I think they would both have a similar but lesser effect in isolation.
So you think that Fain and the dagger would have an equal amount? It's not more the dagger than it is Fain. It's like equal? Because I would be inclined to think it's more the dagger, but it does shift to Fain ultimately, so maybe it's more shifted than I think.
I think it's more shifted than you think. I mean, because this is literally the last time we see Fain before the end of the series.
Really?
He's here, and then we see him once in Towers of Midnight gathering up Trollocs and men, and then we see him fight Matt.
Yeah, then maybe he is farther into that transition and is just emanating the vibes, the same vibes as the dagger. The exact same vibes, right. But it's infesting him more at this point. And
because he's had the dagger back for a while, because he lost it for a while, and then he had to go back to the White Tower to get it. But he's had it, he's ever since his confrontation with Rand and Rochade, and, that's, again, because of the compressed timeline of the series this late in the book, that actually hasn't been that long physically, but at this point, Fain and the dagger are essentially one. I mean, they were one item before they were like part of the same thing before they were united, and now united, they're even more powerful together. And then at the end of the series, when Rand destroys Shadar Logoth, they're really the only thing that's left of that corruption.
Right, but Fain has manifested it fully enough at that point that it is a fully free roaming agent, and all it needs is a place to land, and then it will take root again. So yeah, I think that in answer to your question, Jedi Pants, I think it's the same. I think there's no difference between Fain and the dagger. Fain and the dagger. I can enunciate. So then Lan and Toram Rioton have a fight.
Right, so the fight of the Blade Masters. Lan, of course, is the better Blade Master, without a doubt. He does take a cut, though, you notice, on his side.
He does. Because he is a Blade Master. It's a rough situation.
Right. I always wondered, part of me wondered, is that just Rochade's blood on Lan's side? Is Lan that good that he... But I do think that Lan took a cut to kill Rochade.
Toram
Rioton.
Yeah. Yeah, no, because Toram is very good. We see him fight with Rand. So he's a bit of a fop, but he is talented.
And that fight ends before either one of them can win it, because that's when Mashadar descends on the tent.
Right.
And that's right before Rand gets his side. That's who he's fighting before he gets the second wound in his side. And they flee through the mists, and Cadsuane's there. That's all Path of Daggers, right?
I think so. Yes. And so Toram has been with Fain ever since then. In his orbit as his thrall, becoming part of, Mashadar Mobile, basically.
Right. Mashadar Mobile. Can I corrupt you now?
And it could be that the reason that Lan is injured is because he wanted to end the fight quickly. And it was, take a hit knowing that you'll be able to get patched up later in order to end the fight faster. Might have been the choice he made. And it really reminds me of New Spring, actually, this fight. The fight at the end of New Spring, where Lan has to take on whatever that Dark Friend Borderlander dude is, while Moraine takes on Mir and Red Hill. it's kind of the same thing. Mieren's like, kill the ugly one, and I will kill the girl. And in this case, it's kill the ugly one, I will kill the boy. But like, Lan is like, been there, done that, got the t-shirt scars to prove it.
And there's a lot of, Fain is absolutely insane here. I want him to know who's killing him. I want him to know, but if he's dead, then he will stop haunting my dreams. Yes, he will stop then. I mean, it's like, Fain still has this compulsion to follow Rand. And, like, he's been able to break free of it because of his association with
Eridhall.
Eridhall, you know, like, but there's still that compulsion still there. He just doesn't necessarily have to obey it.
Yeah, so this scene, I've never quite understood, like, who he's arguing with. Like, do you think it's, like, Mordeth versus Fain? Kind of like a Gollum on Gollum situation?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I'm like, he can't be talking to the Dark One. He's clearly not talking to Rand. Who the fuck else would he be talking to?
I mean, because with Fain, we've seen him switch accents, right? From the Lugarder accent back to the more noble accent, right? And that's going from Fain to Mordeth. And I think there is these two people living inside of Fain. You've got Mordeth, who's slowly taking over and corrupting, but Fain is also possessed by the Dark One, so he's able to resist. Mordeth was never able to just immediately take over. He's always had a lot like Rand's scars, right? You've got Fain, who's sort of the outer initial Dark One scar, and then you've got Mordeth, who's the dagger Shadar Logoth corruption, and they don't necessarily blend well together. There's a bit of oil and water, I think, going on.
Sure, yeah. And then you end up with almost like a Rand LTT situation, where it's like, I wouldn't mind you in my head if you weren't so clearly mad. But it's like just evil on evil. And I do very much mind you in my head, you evil bastard.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Because remember how there was when they were following him, they'd turn north with the Fade, and then Fain would get stronger.
Right.
Mordeth would take over as they would go by, and he'd get stronger, and he'd turn them. So there's definitely this power aspect of Mordeth's corruption versus the Dark One's corruption, and they're both living in the same person. And I think over time, especially with the dagger, Mordeth is taking over more and more. But I think what you have here is Fain, the part of him that is corrupted by the Dark One, is compelled to follow Rand, and he doesn't want that compulsion anymore. And he still had to deal with it, even though he's been able to overcome it because of the Shadar Logoth corruption and Mordeth. But it's still there.
Right. So this is Fain kind of clawing his way back up through all the Mordeth, being like, I deserve to be the one to kill him, damn it. I'm the one who's been carrying this cross.
Right. Exactly.
So then why does he make the illusion of Torval and Gedwyn coming up the stairs?
Just to distract him.
Okay.
Because basically, they're fighting. Fain's losing. So Fain runs into the other room. The second Rand follows him and steps into that room, there's an illusion of them stepping up. Without thought, Rand twisted his wrists in cutting the wind and immediately followed with unfolding the fan. So I imagine that's him just basically cutting down and then across, right? Basically in a big X, which would drive off anyone who was coming close.
Right. Oh, he does a big defensive maneuver because he's like, clearly Fain's trying to get close while my eyes are distracted.
Gotcha. So I think Fain's hiding inside the illusion. He sees Gedwyn and Torval coming up, and Fain is coming up at him inside that illusion.
Gotcha. He's in his...
So Rand can't see Fain.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes sense. He's like, if you're distracted with these two guys with swords, you won't notice the little guy with a dagger that's in the middle. Okay, I never quite could make sense of that, but that is very obvious if you think about it.
So yeah, and the only reason that Fain doesn't stab him is because Rand just does this like big sweeping defensive move that catches up Fain, even though he can't see Fain. Right,
because that's always the trick with any kind of, I mean, this is a really good like trope in any kind of magical conflict, is if someone has the ability to mimic themselves, create illusions, throw their image, the trick is always to anticipate where they are without vision. Like, that's always the trick. You have to, like, shoot behind you or, just do a big sweep in a circle around you or, coat everything in paint so that way even invisible people stand out as distortions. Like, whatever it is. Like, Rand goes for the swing the sword in a big circle around yourself strategy, which is a good strategy.
Yeah, and so the line here, the illusion of dead men came back to life, vanished, right? So the illusion vanished, and Fain leaped back with a shriek, blood streaming down the side of his face. So Rand swings, that banishes the illusion and cuts Fain. It's possible that actually the only reason the illusion vanishes is because he cuts Fain.
That would make sense, actually.
And so Fain loses control of the illusion, and everybody comes back.
He breaks his concentration on casting that illusion. Totally, yeah.
Totally.
And then Rand wants to chase after him again, right? Because every time Fain leaves, the pain gets less. And Rand's like, I like pain. So he runs after Fain.
I like the pain.
It's a spoonful of trauma.
Give it to me.
But then Lan is like, bro, that timer that we set off when we got lifted up here, time has run out. Time to skedaddle. And Rand says, so funny, man can't even walk down an alley with a sword in this city. Which implies that he didn't think that the channeling was going to alert everyone. Wait.
All right.
Wait. Doesn't Nyneave get chided for not thinking about that in the next chapter?
Right.
Were we wrong about Nyneave ever thinking about the power? Maybe there wasn't a timer at the beginning. Maybe they...
I don't think they... I mean, I think a timer started. I don't think they know about it.
I assumed they did, but I am dead wrong about that.
I'd have to read the next chapter, but I think Nyneave is basically like, oh, I didn't think it would be enough to set off the finders, or I didn't think, they,
No, absolutely. She totally says that. I've been dead wrong this whole chapter. God, I hate being embarrassed on the internet. No amount of editing is going to recover that. Oh, well. So, yeah, apparently Rand is blaming the fact that they were walking around like dangerous people on the fact that the guards are coming. He's wrong. But that's what he blames for it.
Oh, so they think that because they were carrying the sword, someone called the guard on them.
Neighborhood watch, nosy neighbor, fucking Karen, you know.
Mm-hmm. But it turns out it's actually the channeling.
Yeah, I got some farmatting Fanny up in this, you know. That's a good FM name. Fannie Mae? Farmatting Fannie Mae?
That's got enough bad association with it from 2008 housing crash.
Yeah.
Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, right? Those are both FMs.
Yeah. Yeah.
We got a Fred Meyer.
Yeah, we do.
Ford Mustangs.
Freddie Mercury. That's a good one. That's a good FM.
FM radio.
FM radio, obviously, yeah.
Frequency modulation, yeah. Fuck me.
Let's finish the chapter.
Let's finish it up.
So they run along the roof, and then Lan rolls a nat 1 on his dex check and starts falling. And I love the part where they're sliding down the roof and neither of them says a word. They're both just frantically grabbing, but silent. Which, like, I get very loud when I am startled. So if I was in the situation, I'd be, fuck. That's how it would be with me.
They're both thinking it, but they're trying not to. They know that if they draw attention, they're going to let people find them. So
yeah.
And it's that very much, he's holding Lan, and Lan's like, let go, we'll both fall to our death. And he's like, no, I won't. And when the sun turns green, I will let go, Rand says.
I love that line so much. The other thing I like about this line is that it shows how much Rand still has his bromance with Lan, even as everything else is falling apart. He still loves his girls, and he loves his mentor. And those things will not change about him, even in the direst of circumstances. And
so they fall, and don't they hit the ground, right? I mean, that's why
the alley rushes up to meet them from 10 paces, which is, a pace is like a yard.
A yard.
So, 10 yards.
3 meters.
That's 30 feet. It's a lot.
20, it's like 27 feet. 27 feet.
Okay, I wasn't that far off.
Yeah, 3 times 9.
Yeah.
That works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's quite the fall.
That is a long fall, actually.
To paving stones. Yeah. This is not like jumping to grass or sand. This is tumbling to paving stones.
Mm-hmm. But of course, I'm assuming Rand lands on top of Lan.
Sure. Yeah, that helps.
Rand lands on Lan. Wow.
Say that 5 times fast.
So that cushions his fall a little bit, probably.
Yeah. Marginally. I mean, Nyneave says that Lan is about as hard as stone, so it might not be that much. Mm-hmm. But yeah. And then when Rand comes to, he feels battered all over because it was quite the fall.
Right.
Not enough to get hurt. And obviously he wouldn't have been healed, but he does feel the fall when he comes to.
Don't really get a summary on what's going on with Lan, however.
It's like he's being held in a separate cell and just kind of gets retrieved along with Rand. Because they take Rand's gloves off so they know who they're holding, so they don't just throw him in any old cell. So presumably they do something with Lan that's more like Gen Pop, but then they give Rand, maximum security. And yeah, that's your doubleheader for this week, folks.
That's Rand in Farmatting. And then the next chapter is basically him breaking out of Farmatting, and then the chapter after that is the cleansing.
It's more like Rand getting broken out of Farmatting.
Well, yes.
He does fuck all to make that happen.
Right. Cadsuane gets him out, which is why basically Min got him out because she went and got Cadsuane.
Yeah, I mean, Cadsuane would have ended up in the mix one way or another, but no one who cares about Rand is willing to bet on that. But we know that Cadsuane wouldn't have kept her fingers out just to prove a point. She would have gotten in there.
And once again, great chapter artwork from Liljen. That looks fantastic.
That's very cool looking. Thank you.
Looking. So, really appreciate you doing this every time. It's amazing.
Yeah, and just so everyone knows, we've got Lilligen and Jedi Pants lined up to come on for Tangents. We're going to be talking with the artists of what spoilers for Tangents, for Winter's Tangent.
Yeah, all you have to do is make us art every chapter to get on as a guest. That's all. Just show up to every recording and make us art. No, we really, really appreciate it. And yeah, we think Tangents is going to be fun this time.
Yeah, Tangents is always fun.
Yeah, it's always fun.
But yeah, it'll be fun to talk with the people who are making art in response to us making art. That will be a fun little recursive loop to close.
Yeah, good crowd today. Yeah. Thanks, guys, for showing up. Really appreciate that.
We will brighten your winter, or dampen your summer, for those of you that are in the summer. I'm so happy we are past the darkest part. I'm really enjoying the part where it's 5:30 and still twilight.
Right? Isn't that nice?
So good.
Although I want to get past 6, because that's when I get off work. So it'd be nice to get off work and see light again.
Sure.
I'm still in that point where I'm getting up in the dark and getting off work in the dark.
Yeah. We're at this point, sunrise is right about when we go. Well, not sunrise, but it's nice twilight when we go out to check the rain in the morning at 7. It's like, depending on how cloudy it is, it's like more or less dark. But yeah, the sun coming back. It's coming back so fast now too. Like this is because of the way the Earth is curved, not in a perfect even curve. Like, it happens faster at some times of the year than others. I think this is one of the faster parts.
Well, it's just a sine wave, right? We're on that vertical change in the sine wave where it's...
That too. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's that, plus the curve of the Earth leans into that thing even harder. So, because we're an oblate spheroid, not a sphere.
Right. Although, I mean, how far... Does that really make a difference in the daily...
Yeah, the rate of daylight change as you move through the seasons is not actually even every day. I remember reading this years ago. It's on average 4 minutes a day, but sometimes it's like as little as 2 minutes, and sometimes it's as more, it's just 6 minutes. So sometimes a year it goes faster. But, the sine wave part is also pretty significant. Right.
I was going to say, but I think even in a perfect sphere, that would be the case, right? Because of the time change is that sine wave. And so when you're at the peak of the sine wave, you have a slow rate of change. And when you're at the, on the vertical, like when you're near the equinoxes, you get a very fast rate of change. Whereas near
solstice
and what's the other one?
Solstice.
They're both solstices?
Yeah. Winter solstice and summer solstice.
Okay. Yeah. So, but near the solstice, you get a very slow rate of change.
Right. Man, I understand that shit so much better than when I was trying to, like, get it in calculus. I was in a classroom and there were fans and other people, and, like, I just could not wrap my head around it, and it feels so intuitive now. Like, duh.
Yeah,
Duh.
For me, calculus has always felt very intuitive. I got very lucky that I had a good teacher and also a brain for it. Although, you know, for me, the hard part about calculus was the algebra.
I'm pretty good with algebra. Not the greatest, but I'm not horrible. It was keeping all of the calculus concepts in order for the duration of one equation was just like, I could not do it. But I understand sine waves after a decade and a half of beating my head against them. They start to make sense. There's also like a cool thing with like the area that the sun is covering on the sphere, right? Like that area is changing. So the intensity of the sunlight is also changing. It's not just the duration. It's also like the actual angle that it is hitting you at. So
the angle probably matters more than the surface area.
Well, yeah. I mean, the surface area is an emergent property of the angle changing.
Sure.
And I think that also helps with the sense of spring coming on, is because the sun is getting more intense. And so you look at it and you're like, this is actually bright, which is pleasant.
Yeah, although there is that weird effect, at least up here in Portland, where the sunny days tend to be colder because the clouds hold the heat in. So the nice sunny days, you're like, the sun's beaming down, but it's like 20 degrees Fahrenheit here. Whereas when the clouds come in, it like gets up to like the 40 degrees Fahrenheit, but the sun's not out.
Yeah, though farther down in the Willamette Valley, you get those nasty inversions where you have just like the valley fog that just like caps the whole valley off and keeps it cold and nasty underneath. But if you can get out of the valley, then the sun is shining and there's actually like some warmth to be had. I guess it's not so bad up in Portland, but lower down in the Willamette Valley, the inversions are so awful sometimes.
Because I feel like the inversions would give you more snow.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but it ends up being like it's just in the valley that's all the fog, and it's sunny and clear over, you know, so if you just go up into the Cascades a little bit or into the Coast Range up and over, it's like, boom, sunny, beautiful. So it's not actually like a lot of rain or anything. It's just the way that the fog in the valley can't burn off, and it's just very cold and gross. Winter. Okay, Uma Macabre, you can't tell me not to look into the sun. I will look into the sun all I want.
Just wear the right glasses.
Yes, I actually have so many of them from like, there was an eclipse back in, no, it was a transit of Venus over the sun, and I got like 20 pairs of the glasses. So I just still have them. So if there's ever a good solar event out here, I can have lots of people protect their eyes.
I bought a bunch. My first purchase was the knockoffs that like they sold them on Amazon, and then it turned out they like didn't. They were just sunglasses. They didn't provide the protection that they was promised. So I had to buy a second set, and they like have big warnings of throw those away, don't use them, don't look at the sun, you could damage your eyes. I'm like, great. That's when I first realized, because that was back in the total solar eclipse.
Yeah.
I don't know, like 5-6 years ago,
God,
7 years
so
ago
cool.
almost.
Yeah, that was the year I got my tattoo. Actually, it was 2017.
Okay, so 2017, 6 years ago. And I just remember realizing that Amazon now didn't really guarantee that you bought quality product. And it's really just gone downhill from there as like more and more scammers have gotten on the website.
Yeah, which is a bummer, because being able to look at the sun is pretty damn cool.
It's fun. Everybody's talking about how hard the darkness would be in the winter, and the darkness is hard in the winter. I will say the light gets hard in the summer as well, and that's something people don't talk about as much, because there's this desire to stay up and do things because it's light outside. And you can become just absolutely exhausted without realizing it, because you are just not sleeping enough. And when you're not sleeping, you're out partying is the wrong word, but you're being social, right?
Yeah, you're doing yard work. You're going to events. Yeah. You're going to concerts. You're going on trips. You just want to be outside. And then being outside is exhausting because it's hot. If you're pale like me, it's like dodge from puddle to puddle of shade. And like, I get overheated so easily. And then it's like, will you just go down already? just set, damn it. Yeah.
Oh, to the sun. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Shut up.
Yeah, my
Shut all the way up.
phrasing. But yeah, no, absolutely. I do not want to stay up late anymore, both because of the age I am and also, like, you know, my work starts. I get up at 4:30 to start work at 6, right? So, you know, I want the sun to go down so I can go to bed. I don't want the sun to still be up 4 hours after I go to bed. That sucks.
It's flashbacks to being under the age of 10 again. So speaking of giant cosmic forces that will absolutely blow your mind, how many of you have heard of the series of earthquakes that rocked Turkey and Syria?
I've heard of them.
Yeah, so what have you heard?
That there was like a 7.6 and then a follow-up 7.4, and that a lot of buildings have collapsed, and I'm expecting a high death count. But really, I haven't read the articles. I haven't done my research. All I saw was a little bit of news on it this morning.
Yeah, so that's basically all correct. I believe there was also a 6, which doesn't technically count as big, but is still pretty large as aftershocks go.
It'll knock down destabilized buildings, right?
Yeah, and so basically what happened is this happened in a range of mountains that basically is kind of the border between Turkey and Syria, like the southeastern kind of border. And it's a mountain range that is happening because of how Africa and Eurasia are all making a very complicated set of mountain range knots, starting in the Middle East and running all the way over to like the middle of the Tibetan Plateau and into the Himalaya. It's a whole thing. Lots and lots of collision, continent on continent action happening there. So it's kind of like the earthquake in Kathmandu, in the Himalaya in, what was it, like 2015, something like that. So it's the collision of stuff like lifting up. But yeah, there was a huge 7 and then a slightly smaller 7 and then a slightly smaller 6. The epicenters were like 11 miles down-ish, which is like moderate, if I'm remembering my earthquake stuff correctly. But yeah, lots of flattened buildings, flattened city blocks. Some survivors said that the shaking lasted for 2 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah. So that gives you a sense of how many buildings could have come down, you know?
Do we have any idea on, like, construction practices, quantity of buildings that have come down, anything like that? You know, like,
I don't know about the numbers of buildings that have come down. I do know that one, like, very, like, Middle Ages structure got pretty heavily damaged. That was one of the pictures I saw. Was this, like, 11th century, you know, castle with a bunch of its bricks peeled off. A lot of the pictures are very, very devastating. So in Turkey, a lot of the areas are, like, kind of in that like Portland sort of situation of like, we know that there's a bunch of earthquakes, but also we haven't actually meaningfully updated a lot of buildings to the codes, and there isn't necessarily a lot of code enforcement. So it's worse than Portland, but like it's kind of in that space where we know, but we don't act like we know. And then over in Syria, the area that got hit is like still held by the rebel forces. So the infrastructure is really low and the government response is going to be really low, and can resources even get there? So it's assumed that the damage there is worse, but there's even less like eyes on the ground there reporting. And yeah, the last death count that I read a few hours ago was 6,000, and it's been like 2 days. So if you know anything about earthquakes and collapsed buildings, you know that we have weeks yet until we have a full body count. And there was an earthquake in that part of the world several decades ago that killed like 18,000 people. Similar circumstances. So like, and the WHO, I think, was estimating that there could be like an 8-fold increase from the count as of yesterday. So like, we could be looking at dozens of thousands of dead at some point here. It's pretty horrific. Just whole city blocks just flattened with a hammer, just gone. Like, earthquakes are so thorough.
Yeah.
There's a link in the chat about how WHO is estimating it could be more than 20,000 people. And I mean, it's raining, it's winter, it's a bad time
to lose your shelter.
Unhoused.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's tons of people who are afraid to go into buildings, so they're sleeping out, but it's also like around freezing. So it's really not good over there. So send your thoughts, prayers, and dollars, because it's bad. And yeah, don't forget that Syria has been hit as well. You know, like really, really, we've been screwed over for a decade. People
right.
had an earthquake roll through their situation. So remember them too.
What's been going on in Syria for a decade?
Drought and war, more drought, more famine.
Ugh, Jesus.
I don't have a good handle on it because it's just such a ubiquitous, all-pervasive conflict of fuckery in the background of everything else I'm learning about the world. But fundamentally, drought and famine, and on top of that, government fuckery and mismanagement, and lots of people who are not international refugees, but they are internally displaced. Huge amount of the Syrian population is internally displaced, and it's not great. So yeah, when a refugee camp area that's held by the rebels who are not the central government is where is most affected by an earthquake, you know the human suffering is multiplied by like a lot. So on the other hand, refugee camps tend to not be 12 stories tall. So
right.
There is that.
Right. Lots of tent cities and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And the problem is the supply chain and everything going to that area.
Yeah, the willingness for aid to go there. Is it going to get to the right people? Is it going to get captured by the wrong people? Like, it's aid in any disaster is a mess, but particularly when there's that many layers of conflict on top of the fundamental natural disaster.
Well, speaking of migrations and shelter, I got the keys to my new apartment today.
That's excellent. Good.
Yeah, so I'm moving. It's, just typical apartment move. It's a place that's just a little bit more expensive, but a lot nicer. And it's got a garage for projects. It's got an extra storage space in the basement, and shared storage that's like fenced off and everything. And yeah, just a bigger apartment in general. So I'm looking forward to spreading out a little bit and having a workspace that's not the kitchen table, basically. And I'm looking forward to having a dining room that's not, also in sort of the living room. So yeah, just sort of it's a bit of a more spread out space, and also I can have individual areas for projects as opposed to trying to cram it all into one space.
That is very good for the mental hygiene.
Yeah. And the organization. And, one thing I've learned in sharing space with some other people is, I'm a bit of a neat freak, and it helps to have my stuff a little more spread out. I don't want to necessarily not even share all the space, but there's just too many things that me never want to be doing with our space to have it all contained in the apartment. And there's a little fenced outdoor area. It's like really narrow, but it's a strip of fenced in area that I can like let timber out into. And we could like sit and have a drink outside and not be in the street or in the parking lot. So just a lot of upgrades in terms of apartment quality, brand new kitchen, that sort of thing. So
ooh, very fancy.
Very much looking forward to it. Not looking forward to doing the move, but yeah. And if for some reason, I'm moving before the next recording, right? So I got the keys today. Moving's happening before the next recording. I don't know if I will have internet next week. So we may have to postpone and or do something a little different for next week's recording. So sorry about that. If you don't get a recording right after this one, you know why. It's because I'm totally unhoused or uninterdented. But what's crazy is I was just realizing, we're doing the 2 chapters today, right? And then we've got one more chapter left, and then there's the final chapter, but we're spreading that out over Crossroads of Twilight. So after today, really the next recording is our last recording of Winter's Heart.
Yeah, and then we do Winter's Tangent.
Winter's Tangent, yep.
And yeah, then we're on to our fun spread out Winter's Crossroad thing.
Crossroads of Winter's Twilight.
Yeah, which if anyone was wondering how they're going to listen along with the audiobooks, if you like listening along with the audiobooks to the chapters that we're going to be covering and you were worried how you're going to make that happen, we've been given timestamps by a dedicated fan of where all the different POVs start. Iacona was kind enough to take our chapter breakdown and just find the timestamps for when the POVs start. So I will actually be including that with the episode notes for people who want to be that precision level of listening along.
Excellent. Yeah. And we'll just have to go through and do our notes that way.
Yeah. We already had the POVs
right.
listed out. So, but yeah, it's gonna be a little bit of flipping back and forth, but I think it'll be worth it. And yeah.
We still have a lot of, until recently, there was a lot of jobs that were men only or women only. I feel like only recently have we really come to the point where anyone can work any job, and I still feel like there's a lot of fields where there are almost no women in it, even if they're not forbidden. I'm working in one right now.
Yeah, there's a huge amount of glass ceilings. When was the last job that was like explicitly forbidden to women? Like aside from the whole military frontline service duty thing, because I feel like that's a whole separate category. But like, when was the last like you cannot do this because of your gender kind of job? Out?
I do not know, but that it can't be that long ago.
No, given how recently it was that women still couldn't have like their own bank accounts and credit cards and shit. Like, yeah. This is more than just the legacy of sexism that farmatting is dealing with. It's just like on the books.
Right. I feel like up and through the 70s, there were definitely jobs where women were like forbidden. I would have a hard time coming up with many examples after that, but I feel like
at least
there
would
be some. Yeah, at least in the 70s, if not beyond that. So
yeah. You know, when our parents were doing their thing.
Well, I mean, it's the whole, like, when couldn't women not get their own credit cards up until, like, the 70s? Wasn't that, like, a...
Yeah, the things I take for granted that are, like, the ink is barely dry on making those rights legal for me. Marco in chat says in 2018, people thought it was weird that she sold cars.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of jobs where it's very heavily biased and people make assumptions, but I just...
Well, and jobs that are all male, like the maintenance jobs that I work in, it's very hard for women to break into because when you do, you're the only woman in the workplace, and that sucks. And so you tend not to last, not because you can't do the job, but because it sucks being the only person, minority of any kind in any representative, you know, it adds a burden.
Yeah, that was a big problem that I've read about in the earth sciences when I was studying them. I didn't go through with getting a master's degree or anything like that, but I read a bunch about how it's really hard to be the only woman on a 3-week field trip with a bunch of men. Like, one of them being a creep and the rest of them not saying anything about it really ruins the whole vibe. And it pushes a lot of women out of the fields that specifically require a lot of field work because, like, they so often are the only woman or one of two. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, you're in Antarctica. Where are you going to go?
Right.
You know?
Right.
So, yeah. It's a very difficult thing to break into, and that's the thing you're breaking through. But... that's not on the books. That's just in people being safe and pragmatic with their mental health.
It's funny. I was actually reading a sci-fi series where the suns do turn green, and that's a very bad thing. It's a whole different series where, basically there's a infection that lives in the suns that's spreading from sun to sun, but it's bad because then you can't live around that sun anymore. So it's a whole,
Oh, that would be The Expanse, isn't it? Yeah. I haven't read the books, but that was very much visually part of the show. So, yeah.
And technically, our sun is green. Did you know that?
I thought it was white.
But because the way our eyes see color, right, we see the green spectrum the best.
Sure. But, no, the sun's white.
Or does our brain think it's white?
No, it is white. It has all of the colors coming out of it. So it's white.
but it's got more. So yes, but you can have blue-white. You can have a larger amount of a certain color coming out of the star.
That's what spectroscopy
and our
is.
sun, right? And our sun has a stronger component of green light than any of the other components.
Which presumably is why plants are green.
No, because they reflect the green light.
Oh,
so
right.
That's the only light they don't absorb.
I hate that about light. Frustrating.
Hold on, let me look this up.
I do like how green is the middle of the colors we can see, so we have the best fidelity on green. Presumably because plants are green and we need to navigate plants.
So the peak wavelength in a spectrum generally describes an object's apparent color. So cooler stars appear red and hotter stars appear blue, with orange, yellow, and white stars in between. For the sun, the spectrum actually peaks at a wavelength that we would normally describe as green. Wow. However, across the narrow range of physical spectrum, the amount of light emitted at each wavelength is almost exactly the same. But more crucially, the human eye doesn't perceive light by averaging various colors of the spectrum together. So a very slight excess of green light doesn't look green to the human eye, it looks white.
But it is technically green.
The sun would have to emit only green light for our eyes to perceive it as green. So the actual color of the sun is white, but it does emit slightly more green light than other lights. And so technically, our sun could technically be called a green sun.
So Rand is behind the curve.
A little bit, assuming it's the same sun.
Well, yes, assumes that.
It's all about perception. We don't see it as green, but if you were to measure across all the visual spectrum of light, our sun, it does emit slightly more light in the green wavelength than in any other wavelength. So if you had to pick a color that the sun was and not white, you would have to pick green.
I'm drawing all my suns in green now instead of in yellow. That's just congratulations. You've broken all of my doodles forever.
And of course and then it passes through our atmosphere, which totally changes everything because of the way the light scatters, right?
Yeah.
So
that's a whole other mess.
Yeah. I mean, that's that. When I'm talking about the color of the sun, I'm talking about in space.
Yes, I assumed that.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?